Good afternoon, everyone. 5 o'clock straight up on a Thursday edition of On Q. As always, I'm your host, Rich Quinones. We'll take you up to about 6 o'clock straight up. Hope everyone had a good sports Wednesday, and you are certainly enjoying your Thursday, the 13th of November, 2025. It's starting to get a little nasty out there weather-wise up and down the East Coast, but we'll keep you all tight and warm and snuggly over the next 60 plus minutes talking some sports. As always, we're powered by our wonderful friends over at Fresh Roasted Coffee. 20% off your first purchase. Get in on the conversation. BYP20. Save you 20% off your first purchase. You can always get connected with me on social media at RichQNQ, XIG, TikTok, RichQ on the mic. Lloyd Vance and I dropped a new edition of Back Your Play, which is dropped, and that'll air that'll air Saturday and Sunday, 11 to 12 on TV 48 WWON. And we've got a new edition of Overseas Dimes that'll be airing on Channel 82 in Bermuda. And we'll drop that one over the weekend. All right. So you know what? Yeah, why not? The man always chimes in early and often. Sure, we can do a Thankful Thursdays all month long because of the Thanksgiving Day theme, if you will. I don't have a problem doing that. Hey, let's do it. We got the Thankful Thursdays. Forget about a Thirsty Thursdays or a Taco Tuesday or, the Woosah Wednesday, a What the Frig Friday, a Man Up, Lunes, Radio Dor de Loco, Mentioso edition on a Monday. Yeah, we got you covered. We got you covered, man. We are. What are we thankful for on this Thursday in the world of sports? How about that? That's where we can take it. And oh, by the way, the drama that continues to be the Philadelphia Eagles, as we are already in week 11 in the NFL season. Week 11 in the NFL season, and this is definitely going to be where the rubber meets the road for some of these teams. It is basically put up or shut up time for some of these teams. And I also believe there are a couple players, couple quarterbacks that are not only fighting for a job going forward, but I also believe they're auditioning, they're fighting for their career. One of them you're going to see tonight, the Jets and the Patriots. Now, the Patriots don't have to worry about their quarterback fighting for his career because right now Drake May is arguably playing lights out football, arguably top 2 or 3 quarterback in the NFL for a young kid, and right there in the MVP conversation. Justin Fields for the Jets. That's a conversation for another day, which we will get into as well. So you got Thursday Night Football. You have a huge game. You have multiple big games this weekend in the NFL. This is kind of like a show me time. Tampa and Buffalo trying to rebound. The Bears showing they're legit. Packers trying to bounce back. Seattle and the Rams going to be a hell of a contest. 49ers trying to get Brock Purdy ready. Chiefs and the Broncos, and the Denver Broncos have an opportunity for the knockout blow with a win against Kansas City. Then you got the Lions and Eagles, Sunday Night Football. And the Eagles are a solid team at home. They're coming off kind of a performance offensively against the Green Bay Packers. And we talked a little bit about this over the last several days, the comments made by A.J. Brown. And what's interesting enough is that A.J. Brown has basically doubled down on his comments. He's not going to apologize for criticizing his role online. Quote, same things I've been saying all season. And you had Nick Sirianni kind of fire back, not necessarily at A.J. Brown, but towards the media, because it's getting to the point now where what you're trying to do is limit distractions. You don't want to have to go into this stretch run with the playoffs right on the horizon and deal with these distractions. And now it's getting to a point where a head coach has to continuously have to answer about a wide receiver that goes on Twitch with a streamer and basically said, hey, it's a you-know-what show, and he's struggling, which pretty much will raise the red flag, raise concerns about what's going on with his future with the Philadelphia Eagles. And then you got, Nick Sirianni, who again is kind of brushing him off and, didn't want to speculate what A.J. Brown meant. Well, you got to take it on face value. But here's the thing. Listen, No one's saying that A.J. Brown is not all in. Nobody's saying that. I'm certainly not saying that. He's just pissed off because he's not getting the football. And it's kind of commonplace. Like if you're a all-world player, if you're an all-world running back, don't you want touches? If you're an all-world wide receiver, don't you want targets? I mean, it just makes sense. That's the competitor in all of us. You want to be out there, but you need to handle this. It's got to be held and handled, behind closed doors, really, because the more it's not handled, see, when you keep putting the microphone in front of the player's face, the player's going to continuously talk and yap. And the media, they know. Trust me, I've done it and I've been around it. They know how to tweak the athlete. They know how to get that sound bite, and then they can kind of flip the script and they can kind of push it, their narrative, their agenda, right? And I'll tell you this right now. At this moment on a Thursday, with the Eagles having arguably their biggest test of the season to date against the Detroit Lions, you want to go into this game with zero distractions. And if you're the quarterback, in this case, Jalen Hurts, you don't want to have to go in this game feeling the pressure to get the ball to A.J. Brown. Now, it falls on the head coach and it falls on the offensive coordinator. Period. Figure out a way to get him in the flow of the offense. And if that means getting him some early targets just to get him in rhythm, so be it. But don't force feed the football, because this is a big game. I mentioned there are games that we look at and we say, here we go. Here we go. Litmus test. Eye test. Is this a get-right game for the Philadelphia Eagles against the Lions? And the Detroit Lions are 6-3, first place in the NFC North. The Lions just basically lambasted Washington to the tune of 44-22. The Lions can score. They can move the football. They've got weapons all over the place. That's a hell of a division they're playing in right now in the NFC West. In the NFC North. It's a hell of a division. It's a very competitive division with Chicago, Green Bay, and even Minnesota's kind of teetering. But the Lions want to go into Philadelphia and make a point that no. We're the best team in the NFC. We can go on the road in a hostile environment, weather, and we can beat the defending Super Bowl champs. This is a big opportunity for Detroit. And this is an even bigger opportunity for the Philadelphia Eagles, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to right the ship offensively. You're trying to right the ship offensively. And again, you don't have to speculate. And if the head coach says the player's all in, you got to take what the head coach says with a grain of salt. You really do. So this is where we're at. Week 11 in the NFL, man. I mean, this is, again, where you're going to see the legit teams, the fraud teams, the teams that are basically starting to make business decisions, already thinking about going on vacation with the wives and the mistresses, right? Business decisions when it comes to tackling and just playing bad football. And then I believe there are quarterbacks that are really fighting for their careers. I really do. Justin Fields has to go out and ball tonight. And I don't like the spot for the Jets against the Patriots. I really don't. But we might start to talk about Justin Fields, the Anthony Richardsons. You start to lump them into Trey Lance category, where now you're basically just a journeyman quarterback. Fields got called out by the owner of the Jets after throwing for 46 yards, and he bounced back for 244 in a wild win against Cincinnati. He didn't do anything against Cleveland. He threw for 54 yards, and special teams won that game. This is a big moment for Justin Fields against a very good team in the New England Patriots that have always been a thorn historically in the Jets side. You've got Tua and Miami. Big opportunity for Tua now. Can you build upon that win against the Buffalo Bills, who, oh, by the way, are hosting Tampa Bay? Big spot, Josh Allen. Big spot, Jordan Love on the road against the Giants. A lot of pundits have come out now, and they're defending Jordan Love. And I mentioned this the other day. I don't think Jordan Love at this point is a franchise quarterback. I don't look at Jordan Love and say, this guy's a franchise quarterback. He can lead. Sure. You go on the road a couple seasons ago and you whitewash the Dallas Cowboys. You run all over them and you blow them out in the playoffs. What have you done for me lately in the NFL? So a big moment for Jordan Love this weekend against a Giant team. Buckle up. Jameis Winston is going to get the start. Brian Daboll has been fired. So you got a lot of flux going on, a lot of goofiness within that Giant organization. How did the Giants respond? Jacksonville at home. And I'm telling you, they are losing patience quickly with Trevor Lawrence. They are losing patience in Jacksonville, down in Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence. Like, listen, Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville basically said, we're going to build our franchise around you. You're the top overall pick in 2021. You got to start playing like it. You got to start playing like it. The Denver-Kansas City game, the odds makers have already spoken. They tell you what they believe with Denver or where Denver's at because Kansas City goes in as a favorite. 49ers and the Cardinals, that's a good game. I think Seattle and the Rams are going to be a great game. So we got a lot of NFL. I also want to dive into a couple things regarding the NFL. So as it stands right now regarding the NFL, and this is kind of interesting, right? The NFL is working to limit or ban prop bets amid these recent sports gambling scandals. So we had the scandals that impacted the NBA, MLB. Now the NFL is trying to implement new policies in order to kind of curb any such risk in its own games. Hey, man, you made your bed. Now you got to lie in it, man. You got in bed with the gambling apps. That's what the NFL did. So they sent a league out today. They basically said they're actively engaging with state lawmakers and these sporting bet partners to limit or potentially outright ban prop bets. You're not going to do that. There's too much money that goes around with these prop bets. It's not happening. It's not. What you need to do is focus on why the officiating is so friggin' bad. Seriously. Markets or bets based on officials or officiating, like that's kind of where, all right, now it gets a little goofy when we're talking about penalty yards in a game. Deal with the officiating and why why these referees are so bad in the NFL. Just figure out a way to fix it, make it more consistent. And then in the offseason, get the hell rid of the tush push, please. You have to. We're not talking right now, again, this predetermined outcomes. No one's saying these games are rigged or fixed. But when you start to look at these injury reports, and oh, by the way, now we're pushing for the player to play, it does affect the betting line. Whether it's Lamar Jackson playing this weekend, Brock Purdy playing this weekend, CJ Stroud out again, they all affect because that's the quarterback. So they're good for 2 to 4 points in a shift with the line. But fix the officiating first and foremost. So that's a story I want to get into a little bit. And then I don't know if you guys saw this, but also the NFL filed a grievance against the NFLPA because they want to stop report cards. You can't make this up. So the NFL filed a grievance against the NFLPA, the NFL Players Association. They asked the union to stop their annual team report cards and saying the exercise violates the CBA by airing public criticism of teams according to documents that were obtained by RSPN, the rat ship, the mothership. I just think this is ludicrous. Like, we want these grades to be made public because we want to know exactly what these franchises and these ownership groups are doing. We want to know how the facilities are. We want to know how the gym is. We want to know how they, look at the stadium, the turf. We want to know how the inner workings of the franchise. Again, if these players are being taken care of. But it just shows you one more time the NFL wants to control every single friggin' narrative. I mean, you know who's behind us, Woody Johnson, because he always grades poorly. And if you go back right now, Minnesota and Miami earn the highest marks for workplace environment. Okay. But we also know that kind of the bottom have been the Jets. You've got Carolina when you're talking about ownership group, Arizona ownership group, D's, right? And some are calling these surveys bogus and it hinted that it violated the CBA. But make this public because if I'm a free agent, I want to decide where I want to go. And I just don't want to have to take the word of my NFL brethren. So we'll get into that. And then you got more reports coming out from New York. It's always about the anonymous players and Brian Daboll and basically being a bully and all this other stuff, rich nonsense, which again, man, His antics on the sideline, his childlike temper tantrums, and his inability to actually be a successful head coach, that cost him his job. Everything else is smoke and mirrors. Everything else is smoke and mirrors when it comes to play calling from them assistant head coach, offensive coordinator Mike Kafka, right? And that was the third down drop against the Eagles that Theo Johnson had. Well, first of all, Theo Johnson's got to make that catch. It was the 3rd and 6 from the Eagles 29 in the second quarter of that week 8 game. They were trailing 14-7. They lost 38-20. But again, that's not why Brian Daboll got fired. He got fired because of his inability to control himself on the sideline. And the fact that this jackass clown decides, I'm going to go in the little peekaboo, stick my head in the peep show when Jackson darts in the blue tent, that pretty much sealed his fate. It sealed his fate. And he also turned around and he took the play calling away from Kafka last season. Then he gives them back to him this season. The guy was a clown. He's going to be a little blimp when you talk about the history of the New York Football Giants. That's all. A little blimp. That's all. If the NFL wants to ban it, then what should the owners pay for it? Tush push for life. Yeah, not happening. It's going to get banned in the offseason. It's going to get banned in the offseason. And I'm telling you why. It's the 4 straight tushy pushies against the Giants, right, at the goal line. And then what transpired a couple weeks ago I'm sorry, you can go back to Green Bay game, where every play, the Philadelphia Eagles, you don't even have to be like an intelligent Eagles fan. You don't. You don't even have to be an objective Eagles fan. But you do have to have a touch of common sense to realize every single solitary time they all jump. Seriously, every single solitary time they jump. The guards jump. The center jumps. The tackles jump. They always jump. You can't tell me any other way. This is not bitching, whining, complaining. This is a fact. And if you polled 1,000 Eagles fans and 999 said we didn't see anything, I'm telling you right now, don't stick me in an interrogation room with them. I don't want to be out there all of a sudden when we're doing a head count and we're in a lineup. Don't roll over like a bunch of friggin' rats. I mean, how do you not see it? Every single solitary play, they're going to ban it in the offseason. They're going to get rid of it because it's bad for football. I don't want to hear this crap anymore. It's a waste of a play. It's a waste of a play. The main thing we were talking about with these report cards coming out, and again, you have owners like Woody Johnson. They want to know how this information is collected, who collected. Man, he doesn't even give a shit about the Jets. He's more concerned about his relationships over in London. That's all he cares about. If these franchises are not grading out with high marks, and if you look at the Cardinals, right, and Bidwell family, that's notoriously cheap. Temper with the Panthers, who is a goofball. If you're grading out C minus D F as an ownership, or it's a toxic work environment or culture, then it's pretty much one of the reasons you're not a good football team, because you have constant overhaul, right? You have constant players coming in and out, retread head coaches, firings and hirings, and there's no stability. But then I'm sure you look at a franchise like Kansas City, or you look at a franchise like the Philadelphia Eagles, and they're run a proper way. They're a professional organization. And it's one of the reasons those two teams and franchises have been the most successful franchises over the last 10, 15 years. Pittsburgh had their run, obviously New England with Belichick, but it doesn't mean it was a great work environment. Chip Kelly with the Eagles, different story. Maybe even Doug, different story. But Jeffrey Lurie handles himself a certain way. That's why they get high praise and high marks. So Woody Johnson just needs to just go away, period. Michael chimes in, Broncos country, let's ride. Who do you want to see the next New York Giants head coach? I have no idea. Freeman's name came up from Notre Dame. I have no idea what's going to happen with what's his name? My God, it's LaFleur with Green Bay. Stefanski with Cleveland as an offensive coordinator. I heard Antonio Pierce's name as defensive coordinator. I'm sorry, great player. I don't want Antonio Pierce as defensive coordinator. Like, you don't need to just bring back the great player and throw him in there and be a coordinator or head coach. It doesn't work like that. Look at Mike Singletary. The I need winners. It only works for a week or two. Jeff Saturday. That was an absolute disgrace and a debacle. I mean, that was an embarrassment. It does not work. Like, either go outside the box or give me a proven head coach. It doesn't have to be the sexy hire. And I don't want to talk about it in nauseum because we just don't know how it's going to play out with some of these other teams. What if Cincinnati decides to move on from Zach Taylor? What if Green Bay and their offense never get it in gear and Jordan Love's not the answer and LaFleur loses his job? What if Stefanski is just so arrogant in the approach where I'm not going to play Sanders and everything implodes with Cleveland and they finish the season 3-14, they get rid of Stefanski? We just don't know what's going to play out. You're going to hear these hot names, no doubt, but I just don't know. I don't know. I believe they need talent, but they have talent, if that makes sense. But they're void of talent in certain spots. Would you sign on for Hoodie as the next coach, hoping he brings his pass run from New England with him? I mean, look, I don't believe that Bill Belichick can't coach. I don't believe that the quote game, as some of you guys have suggested, has passed him by. I think he's having a very difficult time in college because it's a different animal. And now what you're seeing in colleges, they hire player personnel, they hire de facto GMs because they understand the NIL, the transfer portal. Belichick doesn't have time for that stuff. And I think Belichick, too, you get to a point in his age, you don't want to have to go around the country and recruit. You want to hire people to do that. NFL, you look at his last season in New England, everything kind of blew up. It was a bad fit. He was dealing with bad quarterbacking play, a lot of injuries, and him and Kraft were butting heads over the last several years. And the shelf life ran out. But that doesn't mean you're going to waste or we're going to dismiss the 20 years that Belichick was arguably the top head coach in the NFL and arguably, the greatest head coach of all time. Now, again, you can argue that and you can throw other coaches' names out there, i.e., a Bill Walsh. Maybe one day we're going to have the argument, is it really Andy Reid? We can have those discussions down the road. But to me, I don't believe the game's passed him by, and I believe he'll still have that fire to want to coach. But Belichick, at this point, he's a defensive guy, and that's what the Giants need. Now you bring in a smart offensive coordinator, and I think they can turn it around quickly because I believe Jackson Dart is a franchise quarterback in just a small sample size. I believe Jackson Dart is a franchise quarterback. I want to see this kid healthy. I want to see this kid upright. All right, 24 past the 5 o'clock hour, cranking up a lot of NFL. I also want to touch on a little bit of the NBA and just another reason I told you guys, I warned the Knick fan when they hired Mike Brown, it was going to be a colossal mistake. We'll get into that as well on the other side. I want to remind everyone, we're powered by our good friends over at Three Brooks Bourbon. Get ready with tea. Played Against Sports, 2 locations, Deptford and, of course, Mount Laurel, and fresh roasted coffee right here, baby. Don't forget BYP20. That'll be 20% off your first purchase. So we'll keep diving into this NFL conversation. We'll mix in a little NBA, and you got some awards coming out in baseball too. And I guess we have to dismiss the report coming out of Pittsburgh that a stud pitcher is actually dismissing the reports that he's not happy with the Pirates and would prefer to play for the Yankees or the Mets. All right, 25 past 5 o'clock hour, Thursday edition, a thankful Thursday edition of On Cue. Quick timeout. We'll come back on the other side. All right, welcome back, everyone, as we are fast approaching the bottom of the hour. By the way, I did also want to get into other comments. There's kind of this, I guess you can say, this divide when it comes to like a player like AJ Brown, whether you want to say he's right, wrong, or misunderstood. When AJ Brown has 10 receptions for a buck 26 and 2 touchdowns on Monday, I got news for you. Then this conversation basically ends. It basically ends. And um, the wide receiver position, they want theirs. Jefferson gets frustrated. Diggs back in the day used to get frustrated. The great ones, the Owens, Jerry Rice used to get frustrated. Great players want the football. You should want that. You should want to have a teammate or root or cheer or play with a guy that wants the football. Who doesn't? It's like wanting the shot late in the game or wanting to be up there in the bottom of the ninth with a couple on and you're down, 2 or 3 runs and you got the bases jacked, right? You want that at bat. You want the last shot. You want to be able to have the football in your hands late in a game. You want to get yours. So, this notion, whether it's, um, you know, being misunderstood, being right, wrong, and he's a football player. He's a football player. And he wants, again, to ball out, right? And I don't have a problem with that. I mentioned last night, I don't know if I friggin' kiboshed him, man. I have no idea. But if you listen to the show yesterday, what did I tell you? We were getting off the air, little NBA to kind of close things out. And I mentioned, Magic, they're going to be a good team. Knicks haven't lost at home. Let's see here. So the Magic beat the Knicks last night, 124-107. Okay, that happens. It's the NBA. Fine. So Shams is reporting that Jalen Brunson sustained a grade 1 right ankle sprain. He's going to miss Friday's game against the Miami Heat. He's going to be evaluated daily. Now, if you watched the game last night, now considering he got hurt late in the game, Knicks are down 16 with a buck 54 to go in a game that was over. Period. He left the game in a walking boot and crutches. Now, I don't know if you want to consider that great news, but a lot of times when you're dealing with those ankle sprains, 2-3 weeks, and if you land awkwardly again, that's never a good thing. You might turn around and, God forbid, really do some damage to that ankle, and it's going to be a nuisance. Here's the problem I have with what transpired last night. And this is the argument that I made and had with Knicks fans when I said, get rid of the head coach, but steer clear of this coach. What was one of the biggest complaints last year with the Knicks and Thibodeau? With the Knicks and Thibodeau, it was what? You had a head coach that basically had this, desire, propensity to play players heavy minutes. Heavy minutes. It's one of the reasons I believe he was fired, plus the collapse against Indiana when I came on the air and said it's a fireball fence. He never changed his rotations in the postseason, all that kind of stuff. Okay. So you got a lopsided game last night. You're in the final minutes of a friggin' lopsided game. You're down 17, and Mike Brown still has Jalen Brunson in the game. And he turns out, leaves the game in a walking boot. Now, we're talking about hypocrisy, right? The hypocrisy, because I'm going to tell you right now, if Thibodeau did that, I would be on the air today killing him. I would absolutely kill him. Why is Mike Brown he's getting a pass today? He's getting a pass. You got your best player, an all-star, the face of your franchise, a guy that's automatic, 25 to 35, any given night can explode for 40 plus, can go on runs, off the ball, on the ball, creates his shot, whether you like the late kick or not, in a game that's already decided, a friggin' blowout loss with 2 minutes to go, and he got hurt. And if Tibbs would have done that, we would come on the air today and absolutely crucified him. Crucified him. So wasn't Brown supposed to be the antithesis of Thibodeau? But we're seeing the same crap. And I don't believe, did the media actually ask this guy, what the hell was he doing in the game? And now that he's hurt, it's just annoying, man. It's just absolutely annoying. It's like the same nonsense. It doesn't change. It just does not change, man. I just, I don't know. I really, you get very frustrated, man. You don't want to see players get hurt. We had this argument in the NFL a couple weeks ago with Jaden Daniels. In a game, they're down 31 points. In a game, they're down 31 points. The head coach, the genius head coach, decides, let me keep my franchise quarterback who has a penchant for getting banged up. Okay? Keep him on the field. Tom and Summers' point, Q, I think there's a little more to this A.J. Brown story. Is it just possible him and Jalen Hurts don't like each other and Jalen Hurts ices him out? You got to give me proof on that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. What was the 4th and 6 play? Who'd he go to? Who'd he go to? Did he not go to A.J. Brown? That was kind of the hoo-ha afterwards. You know, who drew up that call? Was it an audible? Did Nick Sirianni know? Was that the proper call? Did they basically say, the hell with this, we're going with an audible, turn the ball over on downs? But correct me if I'm wrong, that 4th and 6 from the Green Bay 35 with 33 seconds to go, that was a pass that fell incomplete. Well, contested pass to A.J. Brown. I don't think Jalen Hurts is that guy. I don't believe quarterbacks are icing out guys. That's a pretty strong accusation. Luca Brazzi, my bad, Q. Meant if the owners wanted the report card gone, what would the owners give up to the NFLPA to get it eliminated? Thankfully, you're such a calm, understanding host. Well, I am, and I appreciate those kind words. And thank you for chiming in, the ghost of Luca Brazzi. But you got to be clear. I mean, you guys get on me because you said I squint because I can't read the comments accurately. And then you turn around and, you have a comment that's not really accurate there, Luca Brazzi. I'm not going to hold it against you. You're an understanding listener and a viewer, and you're very loyal, and I appreciate that. So the answer to your question, we'll put it up again. If the owners wanted the report card gone, what would the owners give up to the NFLPA? No idea. I can't answer that. I have absolutely no idea. I like the report cards because it also comes into play with the hiring process, the coaching process, the Rooney Rule. It also comes into play how some of these coaches eventually, you can grade them out. It's one of the things that James Hasty does that I think has really rubbed the NFL the wrong way. It's coaching performance assessment, CPAS. It's a tool that grades the coaches in the NFL. The last thing an owner wants to know is that his hire is the wrong hire. So when I'm giving you a grades and I'm saying, look at how they assembled this coaching staff, like you're making this quality control coach, offensive coordinator. You're making this secondary coach, defensive coordinator. Why? Because they're all friends. It calls into question some of these hirings, but it goes into how these franchises ultimately get graded out. Because if I'm a player, if I'm a free agent, if I'm getting ready to sign a monster deal and say I want to go to Miami, say I want to go to, Arizona's a bad example, but let's just say I got ties to Arizona. I want to be Rod Tidwell. I want to go back and there we go. Finish my career with Arizona and cash in. Well, I got to know that these franchises don't grade well. I want to know that these franchises or these owners, they're not looking out for their best interest of the players, or it's not a fun work environment just because you're not player personnel or secretary or traveling assistant to the secretary or one of these assistant coaches and you're a player. You don't want to walk into a building or a room every day where people are walking on eggshells. That happened years ago with DC and Snyder. Did it not? Daniel Snyder, everyone knew, right? It's all about the work environment. If it's a toxic work environment, who wants to be around that? Nobody. Nobody does. I don't care how much money you're making. Nobody wants to walk into a job where they believe they're walking on eggshells constantly. And you had that whole period of litigation back in 2021, all those issues. Snyder was let's be honest, this guy's not a good dude. He was a prick, blocking majority owners from selling 35% ownership, first right of refusal. Like, he knew exactly what he was doing. And millionaires, billionaires usually do when it comes to money or their assets or their entities or their business ventures. But everyone wanted to get out of DC. And at that time, the report cards were Fs, Fs, Fs. It was a failed experiment all over the place. All over the place. It was not a good look. I don't know what they would have to do to rid this, but I don't see it happening because I think it's beneficial to the players. Ego chimes in, Q, real fans staying with A.J. Brown. All right. Let's see. Dave chimes in, Q, let's be honest. A.J. Brown does not want to just win. He wants to compete and be the reason they win. Why do we have a problem seeing that? Madman brought up a comment about A.J. Brown's comments after the Super Bowl. Now, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment. You know how you go through high school, you struggle, you graduate. You never think you're going to go to college. And then you finally get accepted to college and you're there 4 years and it's a grind and it's a struggle. And then you graduate, whether you do it with flying colors or skin of your teeth. It's that, grind, journey. And then the coup de grace, your name is, mentioned, right? Your family and your friends, you hear it, the clapping, the accolades, the tears, the photos. Hey, you fulfilled a dream. You graduated college, you got a diploma. Now what? Now what? Are you really truly fulfilled? And being around athletes for 25 plus years, I can tell you, even the ones that are very successful off the field, it's different with the ones that are successful on the field. Off the field, I might have not as been good, but I've got these other ventures, so I'm fulfilled. But for some reason, these guys that were really great players on the field, even if they had all these accolades and stats and millions and awards, some of them are just not really fulfilled. It's like a fighter. He can win so many belts in so many weight classes, but he's always looking for that next fight, that next challenge. And I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here. I'm not saying A.J. Brown's comments are bad. I'm not saying A.J. Brown's comments are off the mark. I'm not saying that what A.J. Brown said was wrong. If this is how he really feels, so be it. But he's really not saying anything that's, not true. The offense is stagnant. He's not getting his reps. He's not getting his targets. He's not getting his stats. He wants to be a part of the offense. And he knows if he's a part of this offense, then the team's going to have a much better shot of getting back to the Super Bowl and winning it. That's the reality. That's how good he is. So he's looking, all right, where's the fulfillment? This is what I want. I want to be part of something. I want to be the reason that we are winning football games. JD chimes in, Q, did you see your girl Kay Adams, Bruce Arians on and said that Matt LaFleur is indeed coaching for his job? I did not catch Kay this morning. I love Up and Adams. You guys know that. She's fantastic. She's absolutely fantastic. But I did not catch it this morning. I'll have to go back and watch it. Wow. So now you've got a situation going on in Green Bay where you've got this offensive mind in the head coach. And he was brought in to what? We saw what happened with Aaron Rodgers, and we knew when that relationship was broken. I think I reverted back to it. I think the exact moment the exact moment that, as a football fan, you said to yourself, I think Matt LaFleur might be in trouble here. He might be in trouble. And that's when they decide, hey, we're going to take the ball out of whose hands, which is never a good thing. We're going to take the ball out of whose hands? Taking the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands. And that's never a good thing. And if you go back, again, there were a couple games where, fourth down opportunity, nope, we're kicking the field goal. You can't do that with a guy like Aaron Rodgers. And then you lose trust. Now, that season, they went 13-3, and then 2020, they also went 13-3. They had a fantastic season. But you go back, how did they lose that Tampa Bay game, right? I mean, there were just some mistakes. There were some questionable calls. Aaron Rodgers was just absolutely brilliant that season. He won the MVP. He threw close to 50 touchdowns. But everyone always reverts back to certain games in the fourth quarter. And why are you taking the ball out of your best player's hands? It's not going to sit well. It's not. And the following year, low-scoring game against San Francisco, they had opportunities to win that game. And what does he do? We're going to play it safe. We're going to play it safe. And remember, too, they were at home that game. They were 5.5-point favorites in that game. And Aaron Rodgers, the offensive line, did a horrible job keeping him upright. He was sacked 5 or 6 times. And they went away from their bread and butter, right? They went away from it. Aaron Jones was having a game. Adams was having a game. So you've got a coach now potentially coaching for his job, and he's had a substantial amount of success. I can tell you this right now. If the Packers decide, if the Packers don't make the playoffs, or the Packers decide this is just, it's ran its course, I would hire Matt LaFleur in a heartbeat. This guy went 13-3, 13-3, 13-3, 8-9, 9-8, 11-6, and he's 5-3 right now. He's almost 50 games over 500, and he's good for the playoffs every single solitary year. He's an offensive guy. I just don't think they have the quarterback. I really don't. And I think you got a situation to some extent, just like what's going on with the Denver Broncos and Bo Nix. I don't think Sean Payton has 100% confidence in Bo Nix. I don't think LaFleur has 100% confidence in Jordan Love. And when that doesn't mesh, when the head coach and the quarterback are not on the same page, that's a recipe for disaster. You're in trouble. You are flat out in trouble. And we're seeing it right now with some of these teams. You say the same thing going on with Texans, with a banged up C.J. Stroud and DeMeco Ryans. There's talk about DeMeco Ryans might be on the hot seat too. So, going back to Michael's question about head coach, I got to see again how all this is going to play out. Because you might have an opportunity, best case scenario, you have now decided we're firing this head coach during the season so we can get a jump on the head coaching search. Eagles are in a tough spot. AJ bails out Hurts and offense when needed. It reminds me, if you go back to McNabb and Westbrook. And the year that the Giants won the Super Bowl, 2007, 2008, they were a better team. And they had home field in the playoffs. And that's the year that Plaxico had the unfortunate incident, accidentally shooting himself in a nightclub in New York. And if you go back, I was getting very nervous because the way it lined up in the postseason, the Eagles played Minnesota. And I was like, this is not good. The Giants have a bye. I don't want to see the Eagles go to New York. I don't. And that Minnesota game, that wild card game, if you remember who bailed out Donovan McNabb, Brian Westbrook. And you're starting to see a little bit of that over the last several years, even with Saquon and certainly A.J. Brown with these Eagles teams and Jalen Hurts. He's getting bailed out. And you're accurate in what you're saying. But I also believe there's got to be trust, right? And I also believe A.J. Brown is the type of wide receiver, we need to get him going early. We need to get him going early. Joe D chimes in Q. Outstanding memory. Exactly. Fourth quarter, under 7 minutes ago, a little screen pass to Westbrook. He took it 71 yards. Yep. McNabb was under duress. Westbrook did the rest. I mean, that's a good thing to have. Guys that'll bail you out. There's nothing wrong with that. Quarterbacks love tight ends, right? Got to bail them out. Safety valve. You got a very good wide receiver. I would love to see AJ once in a while get him in the slot. You don't have to always worry about him going over the top, but move him around a little bit. In motion, right? Smith's always in motion too because of the fear of beating over the top with the secondary. But there's a place obviously offensively for AJ Brown in this offense. He's that good. You got to utilize him. You got to throw him the football. So this is going back to what happened a couple years ago, sideline Kansas City. The next week, they force-fed him the football. What do we got here? D Knicks fan chimes in. Q, thank you for saying that. The media did not say anything to Mike Brown about that. Yeah, I'm not too happy about that. I'm really not. I'm just not. 17, 18 points under 2 minutes to go. Come on. What do we got here? Pittsburgh P chiming in big time. Steelers Nation fan. Q, did you see that Bradshaw claimed he called all of his plays unlike Brady and Manning? Terry Bradshaw is kind of making the angry kind of tour, right? I saw the comment that he said, did Tom Brady call his own plays? No. Did Peyton Manning call? No. I call my own plays. Super Bowls, there are plays that were not set in. I feel as though Terry's kind of getting to the point where, and now I argued this many years ago. I said at the time, and I was foolish for saying it. I was very naive. Okay. Very naive that Terry Bradshaw was not a Hall of Fame quarterback. And then I kind of went back, forget about the stats and the touchdowns, the picks. He made plays in the postseason, dagger throws, played with, toughness, got knocked out of Super Bowls, made plays, Hall of Famer. But he's probably looking at it now where there's so much, we give so many flowers to guys like the Bradys and the Elways and the Mannings of the world that maybe we forget about some of those other quarterbacks in the past. Also, a very good chance we are blowing it out of proportion. I think yes and no. Yes and no. I think it's blown out of proportion when you start to push he doesn't want to be here. No one's saying that. Or he's going to get traded, which was just asinine. They weren't going to trade him. That's blown out of proportion. That is. But I also believe that there's something to be said about the head coach's decision, and I've yet to hear many people bring this up. He had one guy interview for the offensive coordinator position, Kevin Patullo. That's it, because it's his guy. So we know there's going to be somewhat of adjustment. We understand that, but you still got to figure it out. If that's the case, take over the play calling because you know what you have in A.J. Brown. Anytime you got a defending Super Bowl champ, 7-2, 8-2, and they're just kind of, trudging along, winning games, not sexy, going to run away with the NFC East, first repeat champ in 20-something odd years. Let's get back to the Super Bowl. And you got the star player that's a little upset or annoyed. It's going to be a story. But by Sunday night, when he gets his 6 for, 110 and a touchdown, come Monday, it's going to be a non-story. If they don't target him and they lose the game, it's still going to be a story. You can't have a player of that magnitude. That's like having a Jerry Rice or a Terrell Owens, or Jefferson, or any of these greats, a Swan, a Starwell, but targeting 2-3 times. It's not a good look. It's not. Their offense is struggling. I don't think it's the new offense. I think Hurts is just missing some of these throws. Jalen Hurts is such an enigma at times at the quarterbacking spot. There are some times I watch Jalen Hurts and I'm like, man, this guy is really good. And then there are times I kind of look at him, I'm like, oh, he's an average quarterback. Like everything's got to break for this kid. Or he holds on to the football too long, or he takes a bad sack, or he makes a boneheaded play. All right, Thursday Night Football, Patriots laying 12.5 You got the game in Spain on Sunday, Commanders and the Dolphins. You got a nice little 1 o'clock slate. We're going to kind of highlight Tampa and the Bills, Packs, Giants. Seattle and the Rams going to be a good game. 49ers, they are pushing. Now, the line hasn't changed, but they are pushing for the return of Brock Purdy. They are pushing. Kyle Shanahan said he's limited but aggressive participant at Wednesday's practice. Today's Thursday. So walkthrough, we'll know if he's going to get the start Sunday. Cardinals are going to be again without Kyler Murray. I think the 49ers, whether it's going to be Purdy or Mac Jones, I think they absolutely lambaste the Cardinals. The Cardinals are pretty much almost in tank mode. I'm going to give you an early thought on this game that we'll talk a little more about on Sunday. But I'm looking at this Cincinnati and Steelers game and the comments that Mike Tomlin talked about when he was asked about Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers was a nice little story, in the beginning of the season. But if you've kind of looked up, Aaron Rodgers has taken a lot of hits. Aaron Rodgers has been sacked a boatload of times over the last several weeks. He's been sacked 10 times in the last 3 games, and he's starting to throw some bad picks. I think we're starting to see the decline. And he's 41. Aaron Rodgers, we're not talking about, 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, hell, even 20, Aaron Rodgers. It's a drop off now. And I think it's going to get ugly. I really do. And I think Cincinnati has Pittsburgh ripe for the upset. I really do. I think Cincinnati goes on the road and they beat the Steelers. And I mentioned that the Steelers, I always felt they were a fraud. I really did. I watched that game the other night. Their offense couldn't do anything against the Chargers. But if they lose this game, they go on the road against the Bears, which is a tough spot. Then they have Buffalo and the Ravens. So that goodwill that they had when everyone was basically, slurp, 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 4-1, here we go. They now dropped 3 of 4. I think they're on the cusp of a little downward spiral. And what is going to happen now is it will also open up the conversations again of Mike Tomlin. My bad. I didn't mean literally Hurts, just might not be good. His flaws are masked by an unreal roster and a cheater play, tush push. Think of Jimmy G on the loaded Niner team. Yeah. All I had to do was make one throw in the Super Bowl on 3rd down. The 49ers, I went in it against Kansas City. Jimmy G. I always like Jimmy G. Who's he with right now? Is he with the Rams? Is he a backup with the Rams? Is he still in football? Honestly, I'm being honest here. I think he's with the Rams. Is he not? Backup? I mean, he cashed in. He had his cup of coffee with New England and then cashed in 49ers, and obviously it didn't work out with the Raiders. He was a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Garoppolo was an interesting quarterback, right? Because that was a second-round draft pick. So, but you're right. I mean, you can be protected by a loaded roster and not asked to do a lot. Or, as you mentioned, and it's very accurate by what you're saying, the stats, it's in relationship to the players that you have around, i.e., I give you Terry Bradshaw. Terry Bradshaw had wall-to-wall Hall of Fame players. I mean, wall-to-wall. Think about those Steelers teams. They were just loaded. You had Franco Harris. You had Rocky Blyer. You had John Stallworth. You had Lynn Swann. Did I mention Franco Harris again? Not to mention their defense. But Bradshaw, his career record, he won a lot of games. He won 100 games. But you look at his stats, Terry Bradshaw threw 212 touchdown passes. He threw 210 picks. Throwing for 20-something odd touchdowns in the shotgun, totally different story back then. Staubach did it first year with Dallas, and he threw for 24 touchdowns. And people are like, oh, my God, these guys are gunslingers. Bradshaw made his bones in the playoffs, but he was stacked defensively. I think what he's doing is throwing a lot of shade on Tom Brady. I really do. I think he's throwing a substantial amount of shade on Tom Brady. And some of these quarterbacks that are just recently removed from the game. I'm sure there were times where Brady audibled and called his own plays, and I'm sure there were times where Peyton Manning with the Omaha, he audibled and called his own plays. Bradshaw is just maybe getting to the point where he's a little grumpy, right? Who are your personal top 4 favorite quarterbacks of all time? The Q Mount Rushmore. You mean the Q Rushmore? Oh man. I mean Montana. How do you not put Montana? I mean Montana was a great quarterback. And if Montana could have put up better numbers if he didn't have seasons where he was hurt, Brady's up there. Unitas was a great quarterback. Johnny Unitas was the first quarterback where we really saw the quote 2-minute offense, the 2-minute drill. And that goes all the way back. That stems back from that 58 championship game when they beat the Giants in sudden death. Johnny Unitas was an unbelievable quarterback. And to this day, and I know when Don Shula was alive, Don Shula, one of his biggest regrets was going to Unitas so late in Super Bowl III when the Colts were down 13-0 or 16-0. And he finally benched Morrill. He goes to Johnny Unitas. First drive, they score a touchdown. They make it 16-7. And Morrill had a couple bad picks in that game. That was Joe Namath's day. But imagine if he wins that championship, that Super Bowl. No one's going to remember Johnny Unitas in a locker room with the then San Diego Chargers in 72 when these guys are passing around a joint. Unitas in his prime, he was the, you can say, the innovator of that 2-minute offense. The no huddle offense. That was all Johnny Unitas. So, Elway is an all-time great. Marino is an all-time great. It's so subjective because all these quarterbacks, and they played in different eras too, right? Now, I look at, this is me. Brett Favre wasn't an all-time great. I'm sorry. Brett Favre, Hall of Fame quarterback, don't get me wrong. Drew Brees, Hall of Fame quarterback, don't get me wrong. But I believe those quarterbacks were compilers. They were compilers. They were prolific passers. No one can dispute a quarterback throwing for over 80,000 yards. Drew Brees was a great quarterback, but I don't look at him as a Mount Rushmore quarterback. I don't look at Favre as a Mount Rushmore quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, for as great as he was and all those teams he played for, only won 1 Super Bowl. Marino was an exceptional quarterback. He was a phenomenal quarterback. Unitas was a phenomenal quarterback. Roger Staubach, for the era that he played in, Captain Comeback, phenomenal quarterback. But man, it is so subjective. I mean, we're still watching a guy like Patrick Mahomes play. Lamar Jackson play. What if Patrick Mahomes goes on and wins 2 more Super Bowls? What if Lamar Jackson wins a Super Bowl and wins 2 more MVPs? The game has changed. Those quarterbacks, those were pure pocket passers. Pure pocket passers. Now, Roger can scramble. He can move around a little bit. Roger the Dodger. He scrambled. He moved around with his legs. Marino, pocket. Brady, pocket. Elway was a pocket passer, but Elway also can move around and scramble. John Elway, you look at some of those teams that Elway dragged to the Super Bowl. Elway basically became a star. The drive, 86. I mean, in Cleveland bailed him out with boneheaded plays. But he became a star. And then finally, you helped him out and you gave him what? You gave him a running game late in his career. Elway, Montana, I just recall so many Giant 49er games or, Pat and John doing so many 4 o'clock games with the 49ers and the Rams and 49ers and Washington, 49ers and Giants, 49ers and Dallas, 49ers and Eagles. Joe Montana was just something else, man. Joe Montana was so smart. Joe Montana, can check off. He just read defenses brilliantly. He had such a feel for the game. He got rid of the ball. He had that clock, and he threw a gorgeous ball. That whole West Coast offense predicated on the slant and the catch and run. Whether it was Owens, whether it was on Montana, whether it was John Taylor. Everyone thought you got to go to Jerry Rice late in the Super Bowl. What happens? No. You go from the kid from RV. You go Delaware State. You go John Taylor in '88 against Cincinnati. I remember the game where San Francisco is doing nothing late against the Giants in '88. And then Montana, just boom, rolls out. Jerry Rice, 2 DBs banging into each other. I remember the game where Sam White decides we're going to go for it on 4th down in '87. And they gave Montana like 1 play, 2 ticks. Boom, Rice. 88. The game in the 4th quarter in the Eagles where he threw 3 touchdown passes. Montana, the Monday night game against Denver when he was with Kansas City. Montana, all-time great. Phenomenal quarterback. He just, I don't know. I can't say Steve Young was better. I can't say Steve Young was better than Joe Montana. Steve Young was a great quarterback and a great scrambling quarterback. Montana was Montana, man. I mean, it's just, I'm sorry. I know Steve Young. I know, the younger Niners fans absolutely love Steve Young. And to be fair, if you look at Steve Young's career, Steve Young toiled with Tampa Bay, was with the Express, and then finally had to sit and wait and get his shot behind Montana. Now he's won 3 Super Bowls, but Joe was the architect of 2 of those 3. And then finally, get the monkey off the back, and there we go. Great player, Steve Young. I listen. I still remember when Aeneas Williams knocked him out. I mean, Steve Young worked very hard at his passing, his skills when he was with BYU. Worked really, really hard, and he succeeded McMahon, who was a hell of a college quarterback. The completion percentage, the zip on the ball. Young, fantastic. But for me, Unitas, Elway, Marino, Montana, Staubach was a great quarterback. I'm sure I'm missing guy. Patrick Mahomes, at the end of the day, will be there too. Tebow, no. We put Sims or Eli on the Q. Sims was my guy. You guys know that. Sims was always my guy, and I mean, it's like that scene in Trading Places when they're on the beach, right? And they were talking about what to eat for lunch, and you had the absolutely stunning Hawaiian woman, right? And they're like, "What do you want for lunch?" And I think they said like the lobster or the fish, and she's like, "Can we have both?" Like that's how I feel with Eli. I mean, I loved Eli Manning. I was just the biggest Eli support. I was the defender of all things Eli, and Sims is right there. Sims got hurt so many times in his career, and Sims, he wanted to get out of New York. He wanted to get traded, and Parcells basically said it's not happening. Giants made the playoffs in '81. Sims was hurt. I think he tore a ligament in his thumb. Bruner came in. They actually won a playoff game. They beat the Eagles at the Vet, the defending Super Bowl champs. They beat them. They were up 21-0 like that. Then they went on the road and they lost to the 49ers in '81. In a close game, mind you. Then 82, missed the playoffs. 83, nothing happened. That's when Parcells took over. And then you saw they started to make that ascension. I mean, those Giant teams in the 80s were ridiculous. 84, they got back to the playoffs. They beat the Rams. They lost to the 49ers. 85, they beat the 49ers in the divisional round. Sims had a great game. And then they went to Chicago, and Landeta shanked the punt. Then they finally get over the hump. and they go 14-2 in 86, and the offense is still eh. Sims threw for 4,000 yards in 84, which I think was like the second most that season because Marino had his 84, 85 seasons where he was like ridiculous, 4,800, 5,000 yards. But then 86, everything came together. 87, the strike. 88, they missed the playoffs. They should have made the playoffs. They got swept by the Eagles. They lost to the Jets, the regular season finale. Ken O'Brien, Al Toon, enough said. Bill Walsh, God rest his soul, decided on Monday Night friggin' Football, let's rest our starters. We'll give the Rams the game because he knew that the Giants were going to kick their ass. Parcells to this day couldn't stand what Bill Walsh did. 89, they get back to the playoffs. They lose to the Rams. And then 90, they win the Super Bowl and Sims got hurt. And then 93, they get back to the playoffs. And then they get waxed by the 49ers after getting a win. So Sims was never a full-time starter. And I think Sims's numbers would have been, much better than 33,000 yards, 199 touchdowns, and a Super Bowl MVP and 2 Super Bowl wins. I look at Phil Simms and say he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. And Phil Simms had to play in shitty conditions in that stadium. I mean, you got to take that in consideration. He's not going to get in. Eli will eventually get in. But if I had to say, who's my favorite between the two, I mean, like I said, growing up as a kid, Simms was my guy. And then obviously, Eli. So I go 1A, 1B. But some of these quarterbacks are, unbelievable. Young Montana, Garcia, and Tim Rattay. Tim Rattay was nasty. No, he was not. Montana was unbelievable. Sims was 10 times the quarterback Eli was. Sims was a very good quarterback, and he threw a gorgeous seam ball. But here's the thing. Sims had his moment in the Super Bowl, 22 of 25, 265, 1 drop, and 2 throwaways. MVP. Unbelievable performance. I mean, he was locked in. He became a superstar. But he had so many injuries. And the one thing about Eli is Eli played with a bum shoulder that he should have been knocked out half a season. And then the year that they got back to the Super Bowl in 2010-11, Eli played with plantar fasciitis. Brandon Jacobs tells me the story all the time. They were going to shut him down for the season. You can't be a quarterback and play with that injury. No, listen, Sims tough as they come, but so is Eli. It's like saying, compare your first true love to your wife. You can't do that. Come on, guys. If you do that, you're probably going to be sleeping on the sofa. OA, P. Manning, stop. Tebow, Jake the Snake Plumber, 94 Steve Young could be on there too. Tebow was... Jake Plummer was a really good quarterback. I like Jake Plummer. He was a little bit of a wild man. Young's accuracy was unreal. Yes. Yep. He was that's why his completion percentage was so high. People don't know this, but Young broke the record in 94 for QB rating. There you go. Yeah, Steve Young was a great quarterback. Great quarterback. I still remember the NFL films, right? The scramble against Minnesota. You beat me to it. Sims 86 Super Bowl performance. Go watch that. I'm telling you, 1 drop and 2 throwaways. He would have been 20 of 20. He would have been 25 of 25, which is just unreal. He put up some big numbers, but like anything else with the quarterback position, you have to be available. You have to. It's hard to judge just how good or great a quarterback could have been when you're missing so many games. He didn't play 82. He injured his knee. 83, I think he re-injured his knee and he had that thumb injury. He only played 2 games. Phil Simms played 16 games, 1, 2, 3, just 4 times in his career. That's it. Just 4 times in his career. So you're talking about a quarterback that played 1, 2, 3, missed the whole season 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So let's see, my liberal arts math. You're talking 15 seasons, 16 games. That's 240 games, 240 potential games. And I'll shave off 10 and make it 230 for the strike season. And out of a potential 230 games, Phil Simms played in 164. So how many games did he miss? 70 something, 60 odd something. So again, do the math. Let's just say even conservative, he averaged 200 yards, over those 60 games. Now you're talking another 12,000 yards. Now he threw for 45,000 yards in his career and well over 250 touchdowns. Now we're having a different conversation. That's it. Jay Cutler. Cutler, what a bum he was. Denver had a Cleveland-esque type of run with quarterbacks, a Jet-esque type of run of quarterbacks. Isn't it funny how we all clamor for a franchise quarterback, but they're far and few? They really are. Like, if I can get a franchise quarterback that's going to last 10, 15 years, take me to the playoffs, maybe win a Super Bowl, oh my God, I'm ecstatic. Imagine being a Washington fan all those years and going through all those quarterbacks, or a Cleveland fan, a Jet fan all those years, going through some of those quarterbacks. Even the Colts, before they drafted Peyton Manning, the Raiders all those years, they never had stability at the quarterback position. Denver. I mean, Denver had a run of great quarterbacks? You're talking all time? I'm not trying to, Brian Griese, Kyle Orton, Brock Osweiler, Tebow, Russell Wilson, right? Flacco, Keenum, Tommy Maddox. I pulled it up. Gus Frerotte. Gus Frerotte played for Denver. Oh, my goodness. Did he really? I didn't know that. Gus Frerotte played for Denver? I have to pull that up. We got to winky that. I remember when Gus Frerotte hit his head against the wall. Yeah, he played for Denver. I mean, that's a bad run. Flacco, Chris Sims, Frank Tribuca. Do you know why that's synonymous? Anyone? I'll just let it kind of sit there. I'll just let it sit there because he is the quarterback. Michael should know this. Okay. He was the quarterback that said he would allow Peyton Manning to win number 18 at the Broncos signed him. And they put it right back on the shelf when Peyton Manning retired. So it's a little trivia for you. That's a little trivia for you. Miami Matt chimes in. Q Marino. Marino was an unbelievable quarterback. Unbelievable. I mean, Marino got to the Super Bowl second season. They got waxed 38-16 against San Francisco. Never made it back. That's unfortunate. I'll go to my deathbed saying Marino was the greatest thrower of the football in history. Dan Marino was So if you really want to be impressed, watch old college clips of Joe Namath, and then early on in his career with the Jets, he would flick the football 60-something yards down the field, like literally flick it. Remember Marino would kind of, tap, but his throws were like lasers, and obviously, if you ran the wrong route. But no, he was as prolific as they come. Go back and watch. Tebow defeated the Steelers in the playoffs, right? That was what was that? Demaryius Thomas, right? The slant. I just wish Marino's wide receivers would pay attention after play to see how they run the route. I did not even see that comment. I didn't. I actually just took it among myself, madman, to bring it up. We've had some bad quarterbacks. Yes, every team. Great call on the number 18. Yeah, that's another little trivia question. All right, you got Thursday Night Football tonight. It'll be a snooze fest. I think the Pats absolutely wax the Jets. Tomorrow, Football Friday, we'll run through all the Week 11 matchups. We'll get your best plays, thoughts, predictions. We'll get into a little more of this NBA early on in the season. A lot of comments coming in. I'm sorry I did not get to all you guys, but we will definitely get into it. I also think that eventually the whole YouTube Disney nonsense, I think it ends shortly because I believe they have a market call tomorrow, a stock call. Disney's losing 30 million a week. 30 million a week as this whole YouTube blackout just drags on. And I think they 8%, they dropped 8% after the revenue miss. So I think they're going to try to get this done as soon as possible. And I know they've kind of warned of this potential long dispute. I hope it resolves quickly. We'll talk a little more about that tomorrow as well. All right. Got to wrap it up. 20 past 6 o'clock. Don't forget, we're powered by Three Brooks Bourbon. Get ready with tea, fresh roasted coffee, 20% off your first purchase. New episode of Back Your Play is dropped. We'll get that on the YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, wherever you get your audio pods. And then 2 more episodes of Overseas Dimes dropped in later this week. Like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel at Rich Quinones Q. You guys are unbelievable, hanging out for well over an hour plus with me on this thankful Thursday edition of On Cue. Good stuff with the comments. Enjoy Thursday night football. Tomorrow, back in the saddle, a Football Friday edition, or What the Frig Friday edition of On Cue. Until then, you guys have a wonderful Sports Thursday. As always, be safe, be sound. Stay warm, too, with this weather getting a bit nipply and chilly out. Did I say nipply? Getting a little chilly out on this Thursday up and down the East Coast. And as always, I'm Rich Quinones. Hasta luego, buen día.